Today on Accelerating Excellence, we welcome James Hillier, one of the most precise, fearless road racers alive. He's one of the fastest men to ever race the Isle of Man TT, with 70 plus starts, multiple podiums, victory, and speeds exceeding 206 miles per hour on public roads barely wider than a car. James isn't chasing adrenaline. He's mastering control at the terminal edge of chaos. From conquering the TT to tackling the Dakar Rally, this episode dives into his mindset, focus under fire, and what it takes to stay locked in when the margin for error is death. We talk pressure, risk, mental override. This episode will make you question what calm really means. This is Accelerating Excellence. James Hillier, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Where did it all begin for you, mate?
From as young as I can remember, I think I've just always been fascinated with two wheels and speed and challenge, I suppose. You know, if I couldn't get on a motorbike, it was always on my pedal bike and or racing skateboards down hills. We never really used to stand up on the skateboards. We'd lie or sit down on them and go down a big hill where I used to live. So, you know, I've always been a bit of a speed freak, I think. But it was a little harder when I was younger because we never really had the money to do probably as much as I'd like to have done. So and I think, but in the long game, that's fueled me it's given me more drive to be where I am, I think.
Amazing. And did you have is there like an earliest memory of you and your first shot on a motorbike?
Not really. I remember riding into the garden fence on my first trial of go on a geared bike. You know, my dad was trying to explain the clutch to me, and I'd only watched videos of sort of motocross, and it was just flat out through the bush into the garden fence, and that was my first experience of riding. But I've obviously improved a little bit since then. But yeah, it's you know, it always just makes me smile thinking back to the journey, I suppose, and where it started and where we're at now.
And do you have any were there like brothers, sisters, dad that were into it, or was it something that you sort of just instinctually you were drawn to?
I I feel it's more an instinct. My dad never raced or rode competitively. He was into motorcycles and followed the racing to a level, but before I've got two sisters. Before we arrived, and before he married mum, I think he used to go off on his bike and watch quite a few races. But yeah, it wasn't like, there's almost a heritage with some racers. Their parents brought them up in the paddock and they follow suit, which we kind of had to find our way with it really. But it's just been a natural desire I've had is to and hunger in motorcycles and racing.
So you hit the garden fence, you get up, you give it another crack, and then you're growing up, you're continuing to explore this relationship with two wheels. At what point did you sort of step back and think, I'm pretty fucking good at this?
Do you know, I don't know if I've ever really felt to that point. It was more growing up. I knew, so I wanted to win, and I still do want to win. But like when I was younger, I felt that it was more a case of I needed the opportunity. I believed if I had the opportunity, I could do what the other guys are doing. So it was more that I think I just had to find a way to get there. It was without having an ego or sounding like I've got an ego. It was more. Yeah, I knew I would be fast if I could get the opportunity. I was just prepared to do whatever it took to be as fast as the next guy, and that's kind of got me through, I suppose.
And how did you find those earlier competitions, sort of as you go from someone who enjoys it and you're doing it in your spare time to someone who's doing it competitively now and you've earned that opportunity? Because
Yeah, it changes a lot, and with age and experience, like anything, your eyes are opened with the reality, and it sounds, and I'm totally appreciative of where I am and love what I do for my job. But there are times where it's a lot tougher than people realize in terms of um, the pressures. Road racing's a little bit different, but um, the responsibilities, when there's big money involved with sponsors or big-ish, it's not quite as big as other sports, unfortunately. But um, when you're representing brands and sponsors and teams and the amount of work that goes in, and you've got to sit on that start line and literally put your life on the line, that's when it's hard, It's or more of a challenge. There's like anything, there's highs and lows and compromises. It's yes, it is pretty special, and I count myself very lucky to be where I am. But there's also a lot of hard work and discipline and commitment I've made to be where I am with what I do.
Oh, damn right. And when you reflect back to the earlier stages of your development journey, were there any particular moments that were almost inflection points for your career that sort of, cemented to the community that you arrived on the scene or you're someone to look out for? Maybe a specific race or season?
I think yeah, I mean, I did many years in the British Championship, and there was a few rides there where I won a race, won a race and a number of podiums in the early 2000s, and I kind of like, I think I proved to myself more than anyone that I was able to ride competitively. But 2013 was a big year for me at the TT. I'd sort of served my apprenticeship by then, and I I was seeded a good start number. So at the Isle of Man there, we start in 10-second intervals, and you kind of have to pre-qualify for your seeded start position. So, and that in 2013, I started number one, which didn't by all means assume I was going to be the number one guy, but tactically it's a number that some riders don't want because they want a carrot in front of them to chase down and hunt down on the road. Um, but I knew that was a good opportunity for me to have the quicker guys behind, and when I knew there'd be. I think that year, John McGuinness, who was at the time was the most second most successful racer, but he was the kind of top guy in that period, and he was only 10 seconds behind me, and I knew when he came past, it was like an open book for me to learn from one of the best, and to try and follow him for as long as I can, and it's I'm sure some of your listeners probably won't know too much about the Isle of Man TT other than that it's completely bonkers, but um, it's a 37-mile lap on A roads around the Isle of Man, and there's 6 laps. The big races are 6 laps, so I thought it was a big feat to be able to follow John for the entire race, but I kind of broke the circuit down into sectors, and thought if I can just hang with him for a few places, uh, that would bring me on, and I would learn so much. And I managed to stay with him for the whole race, which was
Incredible.
amazing, and that again proved to me more than anyone, but that I had the ability to then go, and it kind of, I was there then. I was sort of stepped up to the game, and we've sort of been there since. It was interesting how my, not going to say maybe profile, but the phone certainly rang a little bit after that, and it put me on that table of it brought me to the table of the big dogs.
Amazing. And so there's that lot of sort of that natural instinct for the two wheels, speed. Then you start competing British Championships. You have that sort of breakthrough year at the TT. Were there any particular individuals that were particular? Well, I guess if you talked about the example of John there, but any other individuals from a coaching or engineering perspective that were particularly influential on you developing that mindset and sort of fueling that drive and ambition you clearly had in you?
No, not really. No, it's weird. It's just a natural, like something. There's just something inside me, like an animal inside that just is I
Instinct.
instinct. I wanted to. that was my goal, and this was the steps I had to take to get there in whatever way it took to get around those steps. And I, and I haven't achieved all I want to achieve yet by any means, but so we're still figuring out a few of those steps to get there. But we just continue, and I think, yeah, people say we're sort of aliens who race that course, but I only know it from my perception of it and life in general. But I don't sort of see why more people can't do it, which I guess some may find hard to understand. But in other ways, I watch other people do incredible things, and know for sure I could not do that, whereas they probably feel the same about
I
what
think
they.
And I think what you're talking about there is so interesting, right? Because you can only look through your own eyes. And
Mm.
when you have this set ability or perceptions of your own potential, obviously you view the perception of the size of the challenge is relative to your ability to deal with that challenge, right? But I guess, would you mind sharing, particularly about TT with it coming up? And, it's an iconic sporting event. And an element of that is due to the risk involved. And I know one of the things that's frustrating, that's probably frustrating as a rider, is that people will describe guys like yourselves that are throwing yourself. I mean, what sort of, could you maybe share with the audience what sort of speeds you're attacking these corners, and could you just highlight some of the risks and the significance of that race, because it is iconic, and usually things that become iconic have a shit ton of risk attached.
Yeah, it's again, my perception of it's changed. I think that's from, you know, I should know. I think this is my going into my 14th TT. So, I've like 76 race starts there, and which is a lot of mileage, tens of thousands of miles around that course, a ridiculous average speed. My best lap is nearly 133 mile an hour average on A roads. And in the big bike races, we do two superbike races. There's 6 laps. You pit stop every two. The race is an hour and 40 minutes. You get a quick drink at every sort of 35 minutes at each pit stop, and it's a it's a mammoth task and challenge mentally and physically. I don't think there's anything quite like it. Formula One is I know they have quite long races, but the uh, potential risk and outcome at Formula One, they're very well protected in the car, compared to us on a motorcycle, and they're also racing. I know they race some street circuits, but there's a lot more margin there and protection, whereas
Oh,
the
orders of
TT.
magnitude more. You can't compare it to what you guys are doing in terms of risk.
The TT, there is no margin. There's maybe two corners where if you had to choose where you were going to crash, that you would pick, but there's some say 200. There's over 200 corners in the course, and you you average 130 mile an hour. We're doing regularly over 200 mile an hour down some sections. Um, and certain sectors of the course, the average speed is nearly 150 mile an hour. So it's there's nothing like it, and it takes a lot to learn. It takes a lot of respect, and there is often, I think, people who don't quite understand it think we're crazy, which I understand why they think that, but I think they think we're crazy in a kind of in a dumb version. We don't know what we're doing, but it's so calculated. Even the mechanics, they don't get enough credit, really, the guys who build the bikes for that course,
Yeah.
because they're built differently to short circuit bikes to race around those roads for the time they do and the laps they do, and the demands of the chassis and brakes and tires. Everything is lock wired for safety, so nothing can come undone. Torqued up, Loctited, strengthened. We use generally, normally on a short circuit, everything's as light as possible. Whereas there we use heavier, stronger materials to make the bike more resilient, for safety and durability, so we don't break down. You don't want to bust your balls for 5 laps and then be let down on the last lap in a good position because of a weak part.
Yeah.
Um, so there's so much that goes on behind the scenes and in preparation.
It's a team effort again, right? Even though
Massive,
you're the guy on the bike, but
massive, yeah, and even for the mechanics, because they ultimately they hand me a bike, they pass me a bike on the start line that they've put together, that is then potentially my life is in their hands because if they've missed something, not done something correctly,
and can I
then
just interrupt and just to share with the audience there that maybe are new to the TT and this style of racing is that the reality is people die regularly in this race, right, with the competition. So when we talk about rate risk, it
yeah,
doesn't get much more serious than that.
no, it's unlikely you walk away if you go down there. It's although I will say the team now that organise the TT races, I think it's impossible to obviously it's impossible to make it safe, but
Mm.
the protocols in place that they have with the air meds, the travelling marshals, and the areas they can improve, they have done. It's they are doing an amazing job with which in a number of ways they've had to because they need to try and keep the event going as strong as it can and not give people reasons to try and stop it.
Yeah.
Um, but also in the eyes of safety for the riders, competitors, and even spectators. Over the years they've prohibited certain spectator areas because they're at risk. It's a little bit like car rallying, where some people don't seem to have any common sense and will go and stand on the outside of an exit of a corner and then wonder why they get flattened from a Peugeot 205 that's rolling at them. It, it it's controlling the risk and
And it's such a key word, isn't it? Risk. And no matter who we have on the podcast, whether it's, military commanders, hedge fund managers, premiership footballers, or, a motorcycle racer like yourself, risk is part of is part, an inextricable part of elite performance, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I use the term like calculated risk in
Yeah.
terms of calculating anything that could be a potential risk, even if down to the way the bike's built, my line on certain corners, obviously my speeds in different corners, but also I think a big part of it is not to be distracted by things that to some people could be a risk or worry that is actually irrelevant. Not I only calculate the risks that could affect my outcome, not the ones that aren't really going to be, it's or a very unlikely risk I will just write off. Otherwise, and I think in generally in life, that's how I live. And some people worry far too much about too much and a lot of things that are out of their control anyway. I think we just need to push on and get stuff done, not and find excuses not to do stuff rather than find excuses to.
And that's the problem with risk management, right? You can go too far up the other end
Yeah,
and you never do anything. No one will get out of bed down
absolutely.
that continuum.
Yeah, 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 and then you miss opportunity then, There's so many
Oh,
I
man.
hate the thought of missing opportunity and because you just never know where it can take you.
And has there been any particular riders that or influences through your career that have impacted how you take risk or how you calculate risk?
Not 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 really. I think I've learned myself as I've grown older and wiser to certain things. I definitely find with age I probably worry more about things which might seem mad still doing what I do, but I think that's just natural evolution of your brain and mentality is to kind of start thinking about things a little bit more, which frustrates me at times because I know the old me would have jumped straight into a few things, but now I definitely kind of hold back a little bit before I go in too quick to things. But um, yeah, and another thing I would say on the TT is the that risk calculation never stops. While I'm riding, I'm always feeling for vibrations on the bike, listening for noises. Often and anyone who's watched bike racing will know when the bike sometimes unsettles over bumps, you get like a weave. It's called a tank slap or a weave, where the bars shake, and in that instance, it can push the brake pads out from the calipers. So you go into the next corner then, and your brakes need a few pumps to work. So whenever I'm always feeling what the bike's doing. If ever I get a head shake, I will just touch the lever, even at full throttle. I will just apply the lever to make sure the brake resistance is there. Uh, Before I get to the next section, it then become an issue and screw me, you know. So it's constant. The my analysis of my situation is does not stop at all for the whole hour and 40 minutes. It's
I mean, that's just incredible, the amount of focus, attention, and to do that at the speed you're going at and the way the world's just must be, you're just eating up, the
yeah.
roads in front of you. Could you just really briefly describe, like, imagine like you're describing to us, you're coming around maybe a couple of talk corners, like you come into it, you're on a nice straight coming into one of the corners or bends. Could you just maybe highlight, like, what are you thinking about? What you do, where you're focusing your attention, your eyes, your gaze, what are you feeling out for? What are you saying to yourself as you coming up to these, like, or maybe off a peak 200 mile an hour plus speed to come decelerate and hit a bend or something like that?
Um, there's a section early in the lap called Crosby. There's a fifth gear corner just before called Glenvine, and it's uphill. It's sometimes the corners are less intimidating when you can't see them from far away. There's another particular section later on where it's just a dead long straight. It's like a runway, and you can see the corner from a long way off. So you're almost thinking about it for too long. Then you start overthinking, like bracing yourself. Whereas other sections where you come into them quick, you haven't got too much time to set yourself up. You know, you just do it on instinct and feel. But this particular section at Crosby, there's a fast right, then a fast left, and then it goes on up a hill, and there's like a jump at the top, which you're probably touching there 185 mile an hour, and that's again another one of those intimidating sections where you just kind of there's 2 points on the lat where I kind of grit my teeth and really have to lock into the bike, because regardless of what you do, there's quite an amount of external influence there. With crosswind is an issue because you can't see the wind. You know, you don't know until it hits you that it's going to affect things. So leaving the ground at that speed, there's a big valley on the left, and there's often the tracks, trees and walls, which obviously isn't ideal, but it's good because it stops too much crosswind. But there's a big open valley just as you take off. So you just kind of have to lock in, and a small element of hope that it doesn't upset too much. Um, and again, too much off the throttle, the bike pitches, and too much throttle over the crest, um, it wheelies too much. So you've really got to kind of control the speed and also the inertia of the engine, because a spinning mass within the chassis, if you rotate it, like when you hold a bicycle wheel as it's spinning, it affects everything. So you kind of good in a way, the higher the speed to keep you upright, but also it can pitch the bike into more of a wheelie or more of a stoppy. So
And how would you describe how you feel in those moments? What emotions, as you sort of maybe you're coming into that sort of scenario, what emotions have you got there? Because I imagine there's multitudes.
yeah, it's mixed, I think. It varies on if the bike's behaving, which again, it's all down to how well you can get the bike set and building confidence
Yeah.
into that. But if you're in a good place, it's not too bad. But if the bike's misbehaving, then it's a brace situation, because you could be in for a little bit of a ride. Not it's yeah. I mean, it's that is a mad section. Crosby Leap they call it, because it's
Crosby Leap, Jesus.
I think it I think it would really frighten people if you could put people trackside there. There is a space to what spectate there, but and anyone who's listened who has been there is will know what I'm talking about. But it's pretty special place. But I think
And
generally speaking,
are you thinking like is it like an aggressive emotional state sometimes, or is it like aggressive when you say you've got to grit it, or is it just sheer focus, emotionless,
I
or is it motivation,
think,
or is it like euphoria?
maybe an element of euphoria. It's you because of the consequences. You cannot, you know, you it, failure isn't really an option. You have to. It's maybe like a sniper hitting his shot. You have to stay on regardless, and that's something I try and explain to people sometimes is weightlifters or when they work up to a weight at their limit and they're a PB, but sometimes when a section like that, when the bike might blow you out, they call it the bubble, so the flow of air over the bike bodywork. If you keep your head down, the air flows over you. But if you pump, the bike sometimes can kind of kick you out, and the air then comes between underneath you and into your chest. Then it tries to rip you off the bike, because it's like dividing you and the bike at a wind speed 180 mile an hour. That's that would lift an airplane off the ground. So you have to find this mad inner strength to lock into the bike, and because you can't just let go of it would be
Terminal.
bad. Yeah. So there's a lot going on, but when it's weird because when it's going good and the bike's behaving and you feel in that right state, it almost becomes easy, like without sounding cocky or confident about it. You just need to get in that. You can't force that mindset, but when you find it, it's like it's you feel like you could ride around there all day. It's weird how that happens and how you can get to it.
And in terms of you accessing that mindset, which sort of enables you to access your best as a rider, like those instincts, that drive, that feel, all that stuff you're sharing with us there, which is so fucking interesting, by the way. But what are the sort of conditions that you put yourself through to do that? Obviously, you've talked about, the trust in your engineers. I see you train, you do your physical training as well, right? But are there any other things? I mean, obviously, you can see the way you talk about it, the passion, and you can almost see your eyes almost, yeah, visualizing the track. Are there any other things that you do that enable you to just have that mindset that's so conducive to you performing at the level you have?
Um, I I don't know if I try to relax and even off the bike, like not take life too seriously. I think that is a big thing because I don't put too much pressure on myself, and in those again, it's kind of going back to that overthinking and perception of, I kind of feel I just roll with it. I have a goal in mind and try to be as relaxed as I can to get to there. Obviously, there is certain sports and lifestyles you have to be absolutely fully disciplined and to get there. But I think with road racing is a little bit unique that you have to be a bit let stuff go a little bit, and try and be calm as you can. Which from the outside looking in, it is far looks far from it. But that's what works for me. I just try to have everything in place so I'm not stressing. I know the team's good. I know the bike's good. I've got 2 laps of fuel, a 2 lap rear tire, and let's give it my best shot and see where we can go.
Sorry to interrupt, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're choosing to spend your time here. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can. And by hitting that like button, subscribing to the podcast, or a one-click review, you play a vital role. When you hit that like button, leave a rating or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider our audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents and management teams to free up their diary and come on our show. Thank you in advance for your likes, reviews, and subscriptions. Now let's get you back to leveling up.
In terms of like, we've talked a little bit there, and I guess that links to it. Like, what do most people misunderstand about road racing and TT? Because, like you said, there are those perceptions that's just fucking madness. Throwing yourself around those bends at those speeds. It's like, I mean, beyond that, is there anything else people misunderstand about the sport from your perspective?
Um, I don't. Maybe, it's like anything in life. There's a kind of, again, it's that perception. Some people have an ideology of motorcyclists and bikers, and they revvy engines and or Harley Davidson, Hell's Angels, and there's so many different types of of bikers and or motorcycle enthusiasts and racers. And I think there's quite a few fans that go to the TT who don't even ride bikes.
Mm.
They're just passionate about that
Well, it's an
event.
iconic sporting event, full stop, isn't it? You know, I think everyone
Yeah,
can't
I
help
mean
but be gripped by that event.
it's the longest running motorsport event in the world. 1907 was the first race there, and it doesn't. I don't think it quite really gets the the following. It not even the following. Sadly, the modern media only jump on it when someone dies. But what
Mm.
that event stands for, and what's the stories that have been made and created there, and even in the early days, it was massive for the development of motorcycling, that they would manufacturers, if they could win, and back then it was a longer race, an 8 lap race, if they could win a race there, they would, it would top trump and they'd be selling bikes the week after off the back of it. Whereas now, and I've had issues in the past with rides and manufacturer support because manufacturers are anti-road racing. They don't want because they don't want their bike represent. Well, they obviously want the representation if their bike wins, but they don't want the involvement
Right.
of their bike. If something failed on their bike and someone dies, then it's you
I
know it,
see.
it's
Risk
quite
management again.
yeah, it's quite interesting where the commercial side of it is going and has gone, but.
I can just see it being taken over by a big American PE firm or something because I think it's one of the most iconic of events in sport out there. Or I'm amazed like Red Bull haven't come in or something like that. I would
Well,
not be
Monster,
surprised at all.
yeah, Monster Energy are in on it a bit, and it is growing. It is growing. There's talk of a Hollywood movie coming out, but
Oh, there's
it's
got to be one,
frustrating for
hasn't there?
riders. What? Sorry,
There's got to be one.
yeah, and they're quite. I think that's from what I know, it's happening. So it's which will be interesting to see. I just hope they get it right and do it justice. But
Yeah.
on the other side of that, as the racers and riders and organisers to a point, need to protect themselves and make sure we get a bit back in a cut of the pie, really, in the
Mm.
the financial side of it, because it's nowhere near other sports and certainly other motorsports, the four-wheeled stuff.
Mm.
That's probably the speed element people see as crazy. That's something I see as crazy as the monetary side of it isn't there at all. That's probably
Proportionate to the risk that's taken. Yeah.
yeah,
I,
but I think
I find it hard as well, just from a pure entertainment, because I think it's a classic marketing spin, isn't it? You know, Formula One, I like Formula One, but for me, it's got nothing on.
no,
When you look at a motorcycle, you look at the speed, the risk, the angles, the corners, the technique. It's a much more competitive field, full stop, in terms of the gene pool. You know, it's
yeah,
way more competitive to win a TT than it is to win a Grand Prix. You know, you're not competing with hundreds of people, you're competing with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. So
yeah.
for me, from a meritocracy perspective, it's a much more pure excellence, sort of raw, than Formula One. And I appreciate a few Formula One fans are probably going to be digging me out a little bit for that. But for me, it's just a no-brainer. And yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if something just needs the right investment and the right spin from a marketing perspective to really amplify, I think, what the sport's really about to the non biker.
I think it's coming. There's a documentary series coming soon that I think Amazon may have bought recently that they filmed last year. But again,
Oh,
as a
that'd be
rider, we
brilliant.
need to look after ourselves and make sure that the money's getting spread out, because at the moment the riders aren't really seeing it. Uh, it's going somewhere, but not to us. But on the other side of that is, I never wanted to race the TT to make money, and uh, there's certainly much safer ways to earn a decent living than race around there. But to me, there's more to life than money, and it's I'm I just like to go to bed at night and sleep well, knowing I've maximised my opportunities.
Yeah. And in terms of, your career so far, have you had, if I were to, one of the questions I always ask is, could you identify a peak experience where, all your training, the effort, the sacrifices sort of came together, and whether it's for like a split second of a race or a race, maybe even a season, but where everything came together and you demonstrated all the technical ability that you had,
Um,
like
not
a peak
really,
experience.
not really, but probably my most satisfying or peak moment for me at the Isle of Man TT was in 2015. I finished second on the podium in the senior, which is the senior TT is the big race of the week. That's the top race, and I finished second place. Did my best ever lap time there at the time, and uh, I stood on. I was on the podium with McGuinness and Ian Hutchinson, and it was like quite surreal. That was a bit of a uh, it was emotional actually because you know, everything was on the line that race. I just left it all on the racetrack, pushed potentially probably more than I should have done for the circumstances, but it yeah, that's probably my proudest moment I think to date at the TT.
And what was unique about that race versus maybe some of the others, or the
I
seasons, even the time leading up to that?
um I don't the race had actually been restarted. It's normally a 6 lap race, and then there was an incident on lap 2, so they restarted the race under 4 laps, which like any sort of racing, it then turned in a 6 lap. You still push on, but it's more of a little bit more of an endurance. When it was cut to 4 laps, I knew then it was just going to be a 4 lap sprint, really all out. Which is, I say a sprint, but it's still an hour and 15 minutes of racing. Uh, so it's not really, you know, it's still a lot longer than anything else in the motorcycle racing world. But yeah, it was just maximum effort from the beginning, and uh, also it's the last race of the week, so it's a nice way to finish before coming home, you know.
Damn right. And do you think that sort of amplified your focus even more, that when it was condensed to the four lap, it just sort of condensed the sense of urgency, or
I think
you
so.
sort of channeled that whole six amount, you channeled six laps into four in terms of
Yeah, I think
intensity.
yeah, and it's probably a little like in boxing when you see them on in the last round when it goes full 12 and they're just empty at the end. You know, I think this was after almost 2 weeks of racing around there already. You know, we was most people were pretty empty physically and mentally anyway, and it just went all out in that last race to achieve that, which was special, I think, to know everyone had put everything into it, you know, and also everyone finished. It wasn't like people had dropped out. It wasn't gifted in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, like, I guess the other side of that is, of course, a challenge where it just, for whatever reason, things just go wrong, and you do feel stress and you do feel fresh pressure and that negative emotion, and you sort of have to really fight to just keep going, and the performance isn't there. Has there been a moment that sort of exemplifies that scenario for you?
Uh, not not really. Possibly last year's TT, we had in the 600, the super sport class. There's 2 races for that, and the first race we had a small problem with the gearbox, which was out of our control and I couldn't do anything about it in the race. I had to just persevere with it. And then for race 2, you know, I felt we should have been on the podium. We were competing for a top 3 there. And for race 2, I kind of had a bit of a bee in my bonnet and went out the gates too hard and overrode the bike. I was too tense and trying too hard, and it that's the opposite way to go to get into that kind of right state of mind for smooth. You know, it kind
Yeah.
of feels fast because you're trying, but it on the stopwatch, it's not so quick. And I think we finished fifth or sixth, you know, and that was frustrating. But again, a lesson learned in controlling emotion and trying to put things in the right place to be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, I guess it's just that constant calibrating yourself, right? To
Yeah.
what needs going up and down. But when you have those moments where inevitably, like, you're working on the bike, right? Things go wrong. When things do go wrong, you do get an issue with the bike. What is the initial set of thoughts, feelings, or actions that kick in for you?
Just to understand why. understand it as soon as possible, and not never assume something. We need to know exactly what was the problem, why it happened, and then rectify it so it's impossible for it to happen again.
It's
It's
it's incredibly solution focused then.
absolutely, yeah, because you can't chance anything. And if I couldn't give an example, but sometimes it might highlight a potential problem for, if you've used a bolt fails at one part of the bike and you've used that bolt somewhere else on the motorcycle, then you're changing both of them,
Okay,
to
interesting. Yeah.
eliminate any risk of that. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And would you say you're an emotional person in those moments? Do you ever have like a fuck attack or starts?
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think when you're it's a very, very fine line when you're in that right frame of mind and everything's cool. And I haven't got a lot of patience anyway, but if something like just happens that probably didn't need to happen, that can flick the switch, and I turn into a not very nice person. But I, it's not. I appreciate things fail or things go wrong at times and mistakes are made, but um, it frustrates me when these things happen that could have been avoidable. That's
Oh,
probably when
it's
I get most.
infuriating.
Mm.
And in terms of I guess the other side of competing and training is rest and recovery. How do you switch off? Whether you're you've just done a race, you're coming off, you've got more to come. In moments like that, how do you detach and step away from that intensity?
I think at home, I don't really have any other interest in life other than I've got a wife and three kids, so they keep me and us busy with plenty of distraction there. But my sort of go-to place is to my garage and just tinker with mess around with older bikes, and that way I just redirects my focus into again fixing and trying to make an older bike as good or as
There's something for me which is mental about having studied, elite performance with people with motorbikes. People that are into bikes have this ridiculous ability to spend a weekend in a garage just tweaking and tweaking and tweaking.
that's my that's like heaven for me. I do that's my kind of escape is to go and not always riding the
Amazing.
bike, but sometimes I prefer working on the bike over riding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, but maybe stick the radio on and just spend as many hours as possible messing around with something. But yeah, but when we're at the Isle of Man, it's very hard to escape motorbikes because the island's full of them. And but we've got a few over the years ago, and we've got a few kind of like quiet spots. We go to there's a really nice beach there, so we just go there with the kids at Pebble Beach and lay a tin can out or something, an empty Coke can, and
Yeah.
try and hit it with stones or swim and snorkel or fish. And just it's like
Yeah.
it's like complete opposite end of the spectrum from racing around at 200 mile an hour to then just chill time with the kids and at the beach.
Oh, brilliant. And in terms of you've competed against some of the best out there. If you had to have obviously a fictional scenario, but you've got someone who you got to pick someone to compete for your life, who would you have send a lap round that track to compete for your life?
So, um, but in terms of, I'd probably go John McGuinness because he's probably done the most laps around there more than anyone in the world. He knows his way, and he's a pretty safe pair of hands to. I suppose you could rephrase that as who I'd maybe want to go on the back of, and there's not many, but he would probably be the one I'd choose if I had to.
Yeah. What do you think it is about him as a competitor that's enabled him to perform at the level he has?
I think his again the risk calculation of there's races where and I think a lot of the races have had it where you just need to know when to push and when not, and if it's not your day and it's not coming, then it's not going to happen. You need to know that and not try and push past it. Um, so yeah, I think it's that again, just calculated risk and also knowledge and experience, of all the years of riding motorcycles and racing them. You pick up subconscious sensations of vibrations or noises from the engine, or the way the steering's not feeling right. You're constantly assessing what the bike's talking and telling you. So with more and more riding, you kind of become more in tune with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of training, you got TT coming up. How do you train? Obviously, you've been training your whole career for these races, but how do you prepare specifically or technically on a bike for a competition like this?
Um, it's very, very hard, to be honest, because the short circuits are all stop start. You don't get anywhere really near the highest speed as we do at TT. A lot of the course at TT is 170 plus mile an hour, which you just don't get the bike working in that same perimeter on any short circuit. So fortunately, with all the years of riding and years of data really that the team log, we kind of know where to go with stuff before we even get there. It would be very hard if we didn't have that knowledge or data to go back to. But it's also, with it being so unique, there's no way you can ride or prepare before there to kind of get your head in the right place. There's an event just gone last week, the Northwest 200, which is a similar event, but it's all mainly straight lines and it's quite open. The TT is a lot of turns, constantly turning and narrow, so the perception of speed is much different. So you kind of just need to build up. We have a week of practice beforehand, so and they used to, first session was open. You could take any bike out. So I always used to go on the super bike, the fastest bike. So I knew it wouldn't get any crazier than that. But now they've changed the rules, and the first session is always the smaller bikes, the 600. So everyone's in the same boat. It's not a bad thing. It just helps get your brain. It's like almost eases you in, but the 600 still do 175 mile an hour, so it's not much slower, but just gives you a little bit more time to process stuff and slows things down coming at you.
And in terms of, I guess, psychological preparation, do you ever engage any, do you ever do any visualization? I mean, I bet if I asked you to close your eyes, you could probably picture every corner of that track.
Yeah.
Is it something you ever tried, or you think you do
Uh,
unconsciously?
I have done. I have done, and but I don't really tend to do it too much. I just watch onboards for on YouTube just for re-awareness of just going through the motions really. Again, I've done thousands of laps probably around there, and it's sort of
Embedded.
embedded, yeah. But sometimes I know when I'm in a fairly good place because I can watch the YouTube things and it doesn't seem too fast. If I watch a lap on board and I think that looks hairy, then I know I need to watch more to readjust my calibration on the speed. But it's one thing I will say is amazing how your brain adapts so quickly in the speed, in the perception of speed, because I was saying at the first practice session, and when you get on the big bike, you're kind of obviously you're holding back because you're just reassessing everything and building into it. But there's times where you'll feel like you're already going a bit too fast, and then you've still got another gear to go. You go to sixth, and the bike pulls again, and you're just like, too much. But by the end of the race week, you're in sixth gear trying to go for seventh because your brain's adapt to the speed and it's become a new normal. And then you get off the boat on the way home, driving down the M6, and 70 mile an hour feels like you could just jump out. It ruins that side of it. It's amazing how your brain and eyeballs can adapt, and I feel like we're possibly close to the limit of what's possible with the human brain, but the speed and rate of which we have to process and think about things there is pretty amazing.
And in terms of your career moving forward, at this stage of your career, like what's most important to you in the next few years?
Um, I, I couldn't put it in a list of priority. Obviously, I've got to start thinking about later life and trying to sort of put things in place. So that's kind of covered, I suppose. But spending time with my children and giving them a direction in life so that they can chase their dreams, whatever they want to go and do. I suppose I think more about that now and seeing them. But I- I've I've, I've had a pretty amazing career so far, and I genuinely thought earlier life that by now I'd be settling down um, and trying to wind down a bit. But I do feel that the clock's just counting down, ticking down, and I want to get more. I want to do more because I want to get more in before the clock's up. You know,
The fire's still there.
it whilst I can, I need to do stuff because honestly hate the thought of being old, all those last moments of life, and you're just having regrets of not taking opportunity or not pushing to do things that you could have if you tried a bit harder, but you didn't because there was an easy way out. You know, it's it it it's yeah. So on one hand, I feel like I should probably start settling down, quieting down a bit, but the bigger hand at the moment, I want
Yeah, it
to.
feels like not yet.
Nah, and there's signs, there's signs my body is definitely sort of saying no to a few things. It doesn't recover as quick as it used to, but that almost drives me more is to boss it and just say, hang on, no, we ain't done yet. Let's keep pushing and do more stuff because there's a lot of people I meet or speak to. I have the impression that they almost feel like there's one day there's going to be like a something change, and then all of these doors will open, and it just doesn't happen. It just you've got to get out there and
You
make
got
it
to fight for
happen.
it, haven't you?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
terms of physical training, I did want to ask you because obviously, I've seen you train. It seems like something you take fairly seriously. How important is that for you? Is that something, is it for prep? Is it about keeping your weight down? Is it a bit of a mental switch off for you? What's your relationship with physical training?
Uh, I don't enjoy it. I don't. I can't. I know you like your exercise. I really. I just find it boring. I'd much rather be in the garage or out riding a motorbike.
Yeah,
But do it for those three reasons you just said. Really, is physical ability to be sharp and um, strong enough, especially to wrestle the bike about and try and. But again, it's hard in the gym to replicate some of those functions. But um, weight also is an issue. But the kind of all right thing there is I have the race suit from Dainese, Italian firm, which is kind of obviously a bit biased, but they are the best and the smartest suit to be in. But I'm I'm too scared to ask them ever to make the suits bigger. So um, not for any other reason that I just don't want to. I don't want to become like a big dad and get fat. I just need to keep trim in race shape and because I know that will, especially on the smaller CC bikes, it will hold me up a little bit. Power to weight ratio. It's important to keep the weight as low as possible. Um, and then the mental side of it is I know 100% when I get on the start line, I will feel more confidence in myself having know I've prepared and put the effort in the gym, especially when I knew I didn't want to do it. The
yeah.
pain, no gain. There's
There's
there's so
something massive to be said for that, isn't it? The things you don't enjoy, but when you get them done, they do give you that boost in not just your confidence,
yeah,
but your self-esteem, right?
there's just like this little bank of like energy that you find, whether it's from the training or not, but in the confidence and the making yourself feel comfortable in your ability to do something when you've gone through all the sort of shit really to that you didn't want to do to then reap the rewards that you want.
Mm.
Um, that's where I'm at when I just and I think the success tastes better as well. When you're gifted something, it's never as good as it when you've had to
Of
work
course not.
hard and put the effort in and it pays off. It like just quadruples the feel good factor after you've
Tastes so much better.
little wins. It's
Yeah.
so yeah, that's I
Well, if
guess
you're free after this and you want to get smashed up, I'm going to go and do a nasty workout. So,
like, I trained this morning. I'm done for the day now. I've got the bank, and I'm quite pleased with that. It's always nice to get it in the bag and done for the day, and I can just
see, I'm the opposite because I enjoy it. It's probably maybe for me, exercise a bit like you, tinker with your bike. I
yeah,
like it at the end of the day because it gives me something to look forward to. So I look
yeah.
forward to it at the end
I
of the
get
day.
I get that. I get it, but I just struggle to enjoy
Get too excited about
it.
that. Well, look, I wanted to ask you a few questions because obviously there'll be people listening to this that have got their own goals. Maybe I know there's a lot of people. I know Matt Watkinson we had on the as a guest on the podcast. He'll be listening to this. He's a big fan of yours, and he's been applying a load of training techniques to get his time down, his lap time down over in LA.
Right.
And I think he's really excited to listen to this one. So shout out to Matt. But in terms of individuals like that, whether it's Matt on a bike or any individual chasing any goal, based on your experience of going from someone who's a kid who recognizes, hey, I like two wheels, I like two speed, to someone who's absolutely sending it around the Isle of Man, podium and performing at the level you're at, what's your advice to people who just have that? They know, like, right, I'm into this, I like that, this is my goal, but maybe they are a little bit like, oh, where do I start? How do I do this? Or maybe they're doubting themselves a bit. What's your advice to people in that scenario?
I think probably number one is to keep it simple. Some people they go and ask 10 people the same question, and then they get, they start chasing something that maybe is irrelevant. Like I was saying earlier about not worrying about things that aren't relevant in the whole
Okay.
calculation of risk. I just focus on the fundamental risks, and the ones out of my control I disregard. Um, to keep it simple and not get too led down the garden path with someone saying, "Hey, oh, you need this guy to build your engine, or you need that suspension," And I see that a lot in motorcycle racing where people have a bike the bike has a far bigger ability than the rider.
Yeah.
And you need to bring that back a little bit to try and work on your riding until the bike is then holding you up, and then bring the bike on, learn it. You know, it's there's nothing worse than seeing a rider's ability, and no disrespect, everyone's at different levels, but someone riding a bike that's far more capable than they are, they could actually go faster on a much lesser bike.
Mhm.
So it's keeping it simple and sort of staying simple, I think, until you understand everything that's going on, and then small increments to learn. Then you learn with it, rather than
Yeah.
you'd never really appreciate everything on the bike until you get to the very peak with it. So I think keeping it simple and enjoying it, the ultimately that's the goal in life,
Yeah.
isn't it? Have try and enjoy each day as it comes, and make the most of it. And again, with the lap times, a few of my friends do track days, and they originally didn't do lap timers, but now they've all got lap timers, and then they're always then compete with each other, and it ruins their day if they don't go faster than they went last time, or their mate goes quicker than them.
Yeah.
It makes it more fun, I suppose, if you're going fast, if you're always going faster or beating your mates, but it also can take the edge off. So, maybe it might be worth taking the lap timer off for a session and forgetting about lap times, and then
Okay.
enjoy the riding, and then see later on how it goes afterwards.
Yeah, I love that advice. James, I've got some quick fire questions I'd love to shoot your way.
Yeah.
Favorite movie?
I don't know, but if I get, I'll say one in my top three is Notting Hill.
Really?
Yeah, really. I don't know why. No,
That's
why.
not expected from
No way.
yeah.
I just never get bored of it. I just like.
What is it you like about it out of interest?
Just the storyline. It's probably quite. It seems so far fetched, but it's also
Yeah.
believable, and totally probably get slated for that.
Yeah,
But
I'm definitely gonna use
I
that in
never
the
get.
future.
If I see that, it's always on at Christmas, isn't it? And I never get to
Yeah, it's a
always
great movie.
watch it
I
again.
lived in Notting Hill for 10 years as well, actually, so I love it. I love just for yeah, yeah, it is a good film, I'll give you that. Favorite series? Please don't say Gossip Girl or something like that.
Never what? No, God, no. What we watched something we watched quite intensely and got into was Suits, but
Oh, okay.
um, yeah. Do you know what? Recently, I haven't actually watched much telly, but that was probably the last full series I watched start to finish. Suits.
Okay. Do you have a favorite book?
Yours is all right, but it.
Thank you.
I don't. Again, I don't read a whole lot. The uh, tattooist, the Auschwitz tattooist of Auschwitz. I read that. That
Oh,
was
wow.
on holiday. It was obviously not really a very sort of holiday book, but it was. I quite appreciate all that went on, and I think when we moan about certain things now in life,
Oh, it
then
levels you out, doesn't it, when you
yeah,
see
it
such evil?
grounds you a little bit, and
Yeah.
I'm quite open-eyed to all that and try and appreciate where we are in life at the minute compared to how some people have had it.
Yeah, damn right. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you sort of
Um,
find yourself coming back to?
not not really, and not off the top of my head. There is obviously you read a few and think, "Oh, that's good. That hits the spot." With just as a mentor, but I just not a specific quote, but I just try and you know live each day that to the fullest, really, and that
Mhm.
it's not like I sort of touched on about we're not here forever, are we? There's no magic switch where everything just starts happening. It's you've got to take every opportunity that you can and make the most of it.
Yeah, damn right. That's such a powerful message there. And do you have a favorite athlete, rider, elite performer of all time?
I think for motorcycling, in road racing, Joey Dunlop was a
Okay.
legend, a legendary name, and still is. It's who achieved masses in road racing. He was from Northern Ireland, but I think for motorcycling in general, Valentino Rossi is,
Hmm. What a character.
well, yeah, he like drew a lot of new crowds into motorcycling, and and he's still racing now, albeit cars, but I think he was a lot of riders' idols and drives in life or in their careers. He was motivated and idolized by many.
And if you could drill one message into people listening to this, people who want more for themselves, but and deep down know they've got more to give, but not quite sure where to start, what would that be for you?
I think maybe again to simplify, it's very easy to get wrapped up in too much in life, isn't it? I think you need to try and keep it simple or simplify everything as much as you possibly can, and like filter out the kind of maybe irrelevant stuff that you can't control. Like again, like I sort of said on things earlier, and and
Yeah.
and kind of strip it back to basics and prioritize what the key parts of that machine are that are needed to get you to that next step. It's any career or pathway in life. There's no leapfrogs, are there? You've got to pick your path and calculate your pathway, and also be prepared to fail. It's never ever gonna. My son is 14 and trying to obviously bring him up as best as I can, but I think everything, especially with social media now, everything looks so perfect all the time, and it's easy to get frustrated when things don't go right straight away. And it's the failures you learn from, isn't it? Not the
Mhm.
always the wins. It's again, going back to the bike, a part of the bike breaking, it would only happen once because we'd learn from it and wouldn't let it happen again. They're the biggest gains, I think.
Yeah, and with that mindset, you profit from failure, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
James, thank you so much for taking the time to speak. Wishing you the best of luck over the next couple of weeks, and yeah, be cheering you on.
Thanks, man. See you soon.
Catch you soon.
Cheers.
Whilst I hope you've enjoyed our conversation, the magic happens when you put the principles to work by aligning yourself with them. People who listen to podcasts like this tend to fall into one of two categories. The first experience is a high that fades, And before they know it, it's back to business as usual. Nothing changes. The second group, your group, also feel the high, but they sustain it and go on to achieve significant change. What distinguishes the two? Putting these lessons or principles to work immediately. This is potentially game-changing information. I've seen it, but it can't change anything if you don't act on it. Remember, this is not just for accelerating excellence, but also for maximizing your quality of life. There is always a way to optimize. And the secret to becoming everything you can be is to just start. So, if something resonated with you in this conversation, act on it. Excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. So go on the attack and win your day. Chances are you know someone that needs to listen to this conversation. Please make sure to share a link with them and keep me updated with how you get on. Make sure you slam any questions in the comments or reach out directly. I've got you covered. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you're going to find the book useful. The book is more of an operation manual. It's a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit. It's a #1 bestseller filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. Head to jamesaking.com to download 6 chapters free in audio or digital format. The full book's available on Amazon, Audible, or at your local bookstore. All links are in the show notes. The game has changed. The players have changed. The hard truth is it has become harder to identify elite performers to drive your organization forward and ignite a winning mentality within today's workforce. Without the right talent, without the right mentality, and without the right performance systems to deliver these, outlier performance will remain your goal, not your reality. At A6 Partners, we solve this problem every day in the most demanding arenas. The talent, the mentality, it's there. It is possible. Our performance systems are not designed to tick boxes, tolerate bias, or ensure comfort. They are designed to ensure performance where performance is all that matters. We embed elite performance systems to attract and select the right people and develop and motivate those people. From short, sharp, sledgehammer, intensive change programs, right through to long-term sustained partnership. We work with our partners to transition your organization into a magnet for elite talent and embed a systematic process for selecting winners. We build world-class development programs to transform raw talent into sustained high performance. We instill winning cultures that set and live by their own demanding standards, resulting in a team of autonomous, high-performing, and resilient problem solvers who deliver. Our team of consultants is comprised of the outlier individuals I've worked with firsthand over decades. This includes PhD performance scientists, senior British and American Special Forces operators, Olympic gold medal winning coaches, world leading psychologists, and C-level leaders from trading and investing. For us, second place is not an option. If you're sick to death of mediocrity and truly want your team to excel, then click the link in show notes and get in touch now.